in the first chapter. And once you have the reader kind of hooked, then they're willing to go on and read the rest of the book. But if you can't get them in those first few pages, then they'll just put the book down and not bother, especially if it's an ebook that they didn't have to pay very much for.
Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. I'm your host, Dan Ricoveri, and here we have our guest for the week, David Davidson. How are you, David?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. So, David, tell me, how long has you been a writer?
Well, not very long a professional writer. I started about 5 years ago.
Yes, I read that you worked on another thing, so I assume you started doing this once you retired?
I did. I retired at 56, and I did a lot of other things. I did some acting and some other things, and I'd been thinking about writing for a long time, but I never had landed on what I wanted to write and what I wanted to write about.
5 books? I think in 5 years is pretty impressive.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've gotten 4 books out. It's a lot of work, but sometimes it flows pretty easy.
So, can you tell us what type of job did you do before being an author?
I was a deputy United States Marshal, total law enforcement about 31 years.
That's pretty impressive. I read that you used that experience for writing your series.
I did. My main character in my series is a deputy United States Marshal, but it's based in 1870 thereabouts, Texas. But I used my experience and my knowledge about the U.S. Marshals and using that to inform the book, and then expand on the whole thing about what actually would have occurred back then. There's so many myths and legends and untruths about things that would have occurred during that time period.
Do you self-publish or you're traditionally publishing?
I'm self-published because I didn't start until I was 69. You know, the traditionally published route can take a long time. So you have to get an agent, and that takes a long time, and the agent has to get you a publisher, and that takes a while. Then they got to re-edit everything. You got to jump through a lot of hoops. And since I didn't start till I was 69, I really didn't think I had the time to do all that and try to get books out.
Yeah, I completely agree. It does take a lot. Many young writers prefer that because they feel it's more easy, but I think it's relative.
Yeah, well, I have a good friend that's traditionally published, and he is really widely read, and so he makes a really good living at it, and I'm proud for him on that. But he started much younger, so it's not everybody can do that.
How do you feel the process? Was it difficult? Did you find difficulties?
You know, I had some help from some other writer friends, and that, really kind of eased the process a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of a struggle formatting, getting your book covers right. You have to have a formatting program. I mean, you can't just enter a Word document or something like that. And so that can be frustrating. And the different platforms, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, none of them are the same. So it can be quite a learning process trying to get those things published.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have seen many on this show that say stuff similar. So,
Yeah.
was there like any other writer that inspired you?
Well, there's some writers that I really have enjoyed in the past, and one that comes to mind is Alan LeMay. He's a Western writer, and then there's, well, I just can't think of his name right now, but also Elrod Leonard. I don't pretend to assume that I am that level of writer, but they influenced my writing a lot, I think.
Yeah, that's great. So, tell me, how long did you take to complete your first book?
It went really fast because I'd been thinking about it for a while, and so it only took me about 8 months from the time that I first turned on the computer till the time that I was ready to publish. But normally it's been taking me any place from 12 to 14 months to complete a novel.
I guess jumbling with your other tasks, etc.
Well, luckily my wife allows me enough time to generally late at night I sit up in my office here and pound on my computer and she doesn't mind it so much. So as long as I get all the other stuff done first.
I get it. So, what's your writing routine? How do you organize your time?
I try to set aside 4 to 5 hours a night for at least 3 nights a week when I'm writing the book. A lot of times more than that. I mean, sometimes I'll write every night and a lot of times more hours than that. But a lot of that time actually goes into research and things like that. It's not constantly just writing. There's a lot of stuff I have to get done before print to page as it is.
Of course. What's the most difficult thing that you have to struggle when you started?
The most difficult thing is deciding what I'm going to start the novel off with in order to grab the reader. Another novelist friend of mine that writes fantasy, I had sent him my first 3 chapters of my first book, and he sent me back some notes and basically said, this isn't going to fly because you're not grabbing the reader. There's nothing that makes the reader want to continue on. So, and he gave me a few tips, and so then I had to rework that the whole first, 2 or 3 chapters, mainly the first chapter, in order to kind of grab the reader at first, and then once you have them kind of hooked, then they're willing to go on and read the rest of the book. But if you can't get them in those first few pages, then they'll just put the book down and not bother, especially if it's an ebook that they didn't have to pay very much for.
I see. So, do you feel that you changed it as a person after you became a writer?
Not really. So I'm pretty old and set in my ways, so it doesn't. I don't think that affected me. My writing has changed. I think that my writing, even the few years that I've been writing, I think it's much improved, and my editor thinks it's much improved too. So, but me as a person, I don't think I've changed very much, except that I go to a lot of film festivals now. So that's one thing that's changed.
So, tell me, do you have an advice for people considering becoming writers at this point?
Um, my advice is if you want to write, then, just stick to it. Not everybody has the luxury of time that I have. Since I'm retired, I have a luxury of time. And plus, I don't have to worry about actually making a living writing, which kind of frees me because if my books sell well and I make some money, then that's good. If they just sell okay and I'm not losing any money, well, that's okay with me too, because I'm not wealthy by any means, but I have a good retirement, so I'm not having to depend on my writing for that. So my suggestion is that if you're depending on your writing, then you need to go traditionally so that you can make some money. Because if you're traditionally published and they do all the marketing and everything for you, then you could do well if a publisher accepts you.
That sounds great. So let's talk a bit about your books. Do you have like a story of how you named your series?
Well, yeah, my series is Putney, Putney series, and my main character's name is Nahum Putney. And actually, people ask me where I came up with the name Nahum Putney. Well, Nahum is from the Bible, but actually, that name was my great grandfather's name. His name was Nahum Putney Davidson. So I always kind of just thought that was kind of a neat name, and it kind of is a standout name from other characters and other books. It's not like Rock Sledge or something like that. It kind of stands out.
What's the theme of your books? Do you have like a main message on all your series?
Well, I guess my main message is that redemption is always possible. Again, my main character, Nahum Putney, is a flawed character, and he has had some issues in the past, and he is constantly learning to deal with the issues and the hardships of his life, and not always successfully. Then the other theme kind of that I have in my books, because I don't really like to refer to my books as Westerns, I like for people to consider my books as historical fiction. And I put a lot of history and a lot of research into my books. So if when people read my books, they're actually going to learn something. There's a lot of historical facts going on. A lot of the events that I put my character in actually occurred. And so I want people to actually come away maybe knowing a little bit more than they did the day before.
Yeah. It's always fascinating when people use like real events for certain stories and trying to connect them in a way. Can you tell us a bit about your most recent book?
My most recent book is Putney's Law, which it also involves one of my secondary characters, Deidre O'Neill. The full title is Putney's Law, The Trial of Deidre O'Neill. And the circumstances are that Deidre O'Neill is his lover, and there's a gun battle. Deidre kills an individual, and people, they all take place in Fort Worth, Texas, the events do. And there are people that don't like her for who she is, and they conspire and put her on trial for murder. And there's some other ancillary characters that come along that if people read the series that they'll recognize. Then there's some historical characters that are throughout the book, and the probably a full third of the book is actually a courtroom drama. So it's not all the historical novel. And I use my knowledge because as a deputy U.S. Marshal, I sat in a lot of courtrooms and watched a lot of trials. So I use that knowledge to inform my narrative on the trial that takes place. There's some other events, and it kind of ends in a place where my main character, Nahum Putney, finds himself in a moral dilemma. And, got to read the book to find out what happens.
Of course. From all your series, what's your favorite book?
Well, actually, my favorite book is Putney's Secret. My first book was called Putney's War, and I liked it, and I liked the premise because he was searching for a fugitive, and through a course of events, he became a fugitive. But he's real cut and dry. There's no gray in his life. He believes in right and wrong. And my editor told me that it was really good, but that I needed to write another book that explained how he came to that, having those sort of positions in his life. And so I wrote Putney's Secret, which is a actual prequel, and it sets up his background before he became a deputy U.S. Marshal and the things that occurred to him and why he feels like he's got this motivation to redeem himself. It's all part of the secret. And that's really, my second book is probably my favorite. It's also the longest. It is a long book for a novel.
So, what's your goal as a writer right now?
Well, what I'm working towards, besides, becoming this uber famous author,
Of course.
is I'm actually have been submitting my manuscripts to some film festivals and actually winning some film festival awards for my manuscripts. And my hope is I'm trying to get these books in front of independent filmmakers, and in the hopes that somebody will like what I'm writing and like my characters and decide to make a film. That would be, to me, the ultimate goal. I would really love it. And not so much for me, but if it could be successful, then I've got grandchildren that it would be great for them to reap the benefits of that.
Of course. So, how much research did you do for each book?
Fortunately, today we have the internet. So it's not like back in the the days when I was going to college and all the research, you had to sit at a library someplace and, comb through books and reference books and things. But, we do have the internet, so it's a lot easier in that nature sometimes. But the problem with the internet is that you have to verify sources. You can't just accept Wikipedia's version of it, So you have to go in depth. So I buy a lot of books. I go to different places. One of the things that I really like doing whenever I have the capability is actually going to the sites where I set my books. Mostly my stories have revolved around West Texas. On the one hand, I'm fortunate because I grew up in the area and I know these areas, but sometimes I have to go out to these areas to get a real feel for what the geography is, how the landscape lies.
It's historical. So, yeah.
And so, I'm really able to find, some different things that I never knew about. I went out to an area for my third book, Putney's Reckoning. I went out to an area about 40 miles east of Lubbock, Texas. There's a place called Blanco Canyon, and I drove around there. I went to several small museums and things and got some different information from them. But I stopped at, I'm not exactly sure where you're at, but in Texas, we have these signs, these historical markers on the side of the highways. And I stopped at this one intersection. There were like 6 historical markers there. And I got to reading I read all of them, but one of the markers told about a lake, a natural lake that had been in that area, but that in the 1880s, the river flooded and washed out the natural dam, so the lake wasn't there anymore. And I talked to people around the area, and nobody, except for the people that had stopped and read that sign, knew that there had ever been a lake out there, a natural lake. So I was able to put that in my book, which I thought was a pretty unique thing. And I've actually had some people that know the area call me on and say, "Hey, no, there's no natural lake out there." And I said, "No, there's not now, but there used to be." So it was a lot of fun doing, finding those little nuggets like that,
Yeah, I can see that. So do you have like an interesting story with your readers? One that got stuck in your memory?
One thing that I like to do in my books is I like to put little Easter eggs from like movies, So I put little things in my books, just a very small thing, and I pass over it real quick. I don't delve on it. And most people don't catch them, but I have a reader that caught me at a festival one time, and he said, "I saw what you did there." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I saw how you referenced Billy the Kid without referencing Billy the Kid." And I said, "Oh, you caught that, did you?" And so I was really happy that somebody actually caught my reference, and without me, it wasn't something I hit him over the head with. You had to kind of know your history to begin with to catch the reference. So really read the book,
Yeah, it is a beautiful feeling. So tell me, for your fellow writers, what do you advise them when working with cover artists and designers and printers and stuff like that?
Well, my thing with book covers, and I went with Markee Books this last time. I wish I'd found them earlier. Like I say, when I first started off, it's all a learning process. So the first couple times, I went to a pre-made book cover company, and they had these book covers that you could take that book cover and you could put your own title and everything like that on it. And then they would make changes in it for you as you went along. And it started out, it was really inexpensive. It was like $85 or $89 for the book cover. But as it went along, then they charged you for the back cover, and they charged you for the spine, and they charged you for any changes you made. And they just kept charging and kept charging. So it turned out to not be that inexpensive. And then when I ran across another book cover designer that I tried, and they were okay, but their service wasn't that good. They ended up doing a pretty good book cover. I liked the book cover, but it took a lot for me to get them there. But then I landed on Markee, and they were there with me every step. There was a charge, and then but I didn't have to worry about paying for any changes. And once I paid that fee, I could make the changes that I wanted without any extra upcharge or anything like that. And they really worked with me to get the cover how I wanted it. My advice to other writers is when you're looking for a cover, or you're designing your cover has to tell a story. When people look at that cover, they have to know right then that what sort of thing is going on. It doesn't tell the whole story of the book, but it at least gets the reader to knowing a little bit about the book. And that was what I liked about Markee, was they really worked with me to have a visual that told a story, and then got the essence of it correct. It felt right. And that's what I really enjoyed working with them. And a lot of times these days, a lot of businesses, they only want to do things through email or chat or something like that. I'm an old guy. I'm an old school guy, so I like to talk to people on the
I
telephone.
completely agree. It happened to me when I used another service doing some sales research, and it was the communication for by email like that. You write in a day, then you have to wait like 2 weeks for an answer, then like another week, and it's feel like talking to our AI or our bot.
Yeah, it's maddening. And that was the nice thing about Markee, is I sent them a message and I said, look, really, I need to talk to somebody. And so they set me up, and we had conversations. And then after that initial phone conversation, after that, everything went so smooth after that.
I'm happy to hear that you have a good experience.
Well, I recommend them, and I already have my next book in progress, and the Marquee is who I'm going to be coming to for my
Yeah,
next book cover.
I saw that you posted on Twitter.
Yeah, my next book is going to be called Putney's Crusade. I haven't decided exactly how I want a book cover done yet, but it'll come across. It'll come out, I'm sure.
Do you have like the story already in place?
I've got it outlined what I want to do. It's actually a story I've been thinking about since I first started this series, because again, I like to tell history, and I like for people to learn something about themselves maybe and their own history. So this particular story, the subtitle is The Knights of the Rising Sun. So it'll be Putney's Crusade, The Knights of the Rising Sun. And it's, as I explained in my forward in my last book, it's not about Putney going to Japan and fighting anybody. There was a KKK style group called the Knights of the Rising Sun that rose up in Texas post Reconstruction, and they were a very radical and racist group that tried to put down the freedmen. And so I thought it was a story that needed to be told and people made aware of things. Now I'm moving some things around, the locations and things to fit my characters a little bit better, but the general story will be about this KKK style organization and Putney's investigation and eventual arrest of these people.
Interesting. So tell me, how do you handle like marketing and sales yourself?
Not very well. My online marketing experience is not great. Anytime that I do an in-person event, I do very, very well. So that's where I'm making my money, and I try to do a lot of in-person events. I've been real fortunate in those. Now, one thing I've done is about every 3 months, I go to a local gun show, and I know gun shows have a bad reputation with some folk and a good reputation with others. But the truth is that the people that go to gun shows they like these sorts of stories. My expense is very low for my entry into one of the gun shows, and my return, I sell a lot of books, a lot. And doing things like that and going to some different conventions and things, taking, again, because I'm retired, I have the ability to kind of move around and do things that maybe other people don't have the time to do.
So, okay. So tell me, what do you feel your greatest accomplishment since you became a writer?
Well, I think my greatest accomplishment have been, honestly, my first three books have won a total of five awards in film festivals for best manuscript. I've won best manuscript for won best action drama manuscript. I've won best Western manuscript twice, and then I actually won best book cover design once. So those things are really when people from actually a different profession recognizes your work and gives you awards, it's a really good feeling. I mean, it doesn't put any more money in my pocket. It's just a great feeling when you win an award, especially when it's not really in the field that you've been working in. When somebody acknowledges your hard work and says that it's actually good, it just gives you a real good feeling.
I can get that. So tell me, do you have like an advice for avoiding creative burnout?
You know, uh, I guess I've experienced once in a while a block or something like that. And what I think a lot of people, when they run into these things, is they work too hard. They're trying too hard to break the block. And the best thing is just go do something else for a while. If I'm sitting in front of my computer and nothing is coming across on the page, then I just turn it off and go do something else. Because I do most of my writing late at night. So, I mean, I may just go ahead and go to bed or watch a TV program or something like that and get back to it the next day or maybe even a couple of days later. I don't concentrate on the block. And I think that's what happens to some people is they really let it upset them. And I try not to do that.
Can you tell me a bit about your future plan? Are you planning to work on a new series not related to Putney's world?
I've got a couple of stories that are in the works. That it's funny as a writer. I find that I'm really constantly writing, even if it's just something that's going on in my head. But I have a horror western that I want to work on. I've got some ideas for it. And then I have just recently come up with an idea for a modern day story, a more contemporary story, kind of along the lines of more of a spy kind of thriller.
Ooh,
Along that.
interesting.
So
Also, Western horror. I can imagine that.
yeah, I've got a little bit different idea. I've seen some different Western horrors, but I'm trying to approach it from a different angle, and it's not going to be your typical horror. There's no Yeah, I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I know what I want to do, and it's not. I'm going to try to be atypical.
For your plans for the future, are you planning to go to a big event in the next months?
Well, actually, the United States Marshal Service Association, which is a retired association, has their annual conference next week. So I'm going to that, and I'm going to be on a writers panel for that conference,
Oh,
and of course, have my books for sale there. Then in October, I'm having an actual book release party for Putney's Law, and then in October, I'm going to Tucson to the Wild Bunch Film Festival, where I have one of my books, Putney's Secret, is a nominee, and I've also submitted a short screenplay. So I'm branching out into doing some screenplays too,
that's
which is
great.
a whole nother animal from writing novels. I can tell you that.
So, are you going to do a signing event too?
Yeah, I'm gonna at the book release I'm going to do in October. I'm going to do a book signing, and I generally do pretty well there at those. What I try to do is go to local wineries, or I have been to a couple of local breweries, or some local restaurants and things that have the space, and I do pretty well on those. I would like to get into some bookstores, but there's so few independent bookstores anymore. And if you don't have if you're not marketing, unless your books are actually on the Barnes and Noble platform, you can't do a book signing at Barnes and Noble.
One, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they won't let you do a book signing if your books aren't on that platform. But I have been looking at doing some book signings at the half price books, and of course, again, probably in February, I will probably go to another gun show. But I may. I've been doing mostly gun shows in Fort Worth, where I live, but I may go down Central Texas and try to hit a different market down
That's
there.
a good idea. Central Texas is probably a bit more metropolitan, I guess. Big city.
Well, I mean, Fort Worth's a big city, but I was actually thinking about maybe going to a little less large city, maybe like Waco or Temple or something like that. That has kind of a more rural clientele. Maybe those people don't mean to generalize too much, but I think they like the stories of the Old West and historical stuff like that a little bit more than maybe people in the bigger cities.
Yeah, I think bigger cities are more for fantasies. I think sci-fi maybe more, and romance.
If I was actually wanting to be if I had started out wanting to have a big career in writing, I probably should have chosen fantasy or science fiction or romance, because
Yeah.
those seem to. And in fact, one of my problems in selling books is my competition with a romance writer, which sounds kind of weird, but I have never read any of her books, but I'm sure she's a terrific author. There's an author by the name of Mary Jo Putney, and her last name being the same last name as my character. So when you put my titles in searching on Amazon, all her books come up, and she's written, gosh, hundreds of books, it seems like. So all her books come up first. So it's that's a little frustrating. If people Google my books, they come right up. But if they try and search them on Amazon, yeah, you always get Mary Jo Putney. So she's my competition.
Indirectly, but so. So
Yeah.
you only have your book on Amazon on the platforms, right?
I have most of my books are on Amazon, but I am branching out. I did get Putney's Law on Barnes and Noble, and I'm planning on putting my other books on Barnes and Noble, as well as on Google Books and Apple Books. I need to get them on more platforms. I just haven't been able to find the time to do it, because when you're self-published, you have to do all these things yourself. The marketing, the getting the books on the platforms, and everything is. It's not just the writing, and sometimes that kind of stifles you.
Yeah, it does. Do you have like social media you want to share for people to contact you, etc.?
Yeah, they could go on Facebook to. I actually have an author's page. It's called Putney's World, and I try to keep people updated on what's going on with my books. I also highlight some of my fans on there, some of the people that really have shown appreciation for my books, and I highlight other people that I come across in the course of life. Some people I've worked with as deputy marshals, people I've met at film festivals, people I've met when I was acting, and which I'm still acting when I get a chance, by the way. So, but somebody told me the other day, they say, well, you sure seem to be doing stuff all the time. And I've got a philosophy since I'm 73 years old now. I've got a philosophy that if I feel like if I slow down, that's when I die. So I just keep on
No,
chugging away.
I completely agree. I mean, how do I say it? It can be one or the other. So people usually like live a life that never stay put and just go everywhere. The moment something happened that make them not able to walk or something like that, they die like in a month, usually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Because their bodies are not used to that. People that are live it all their lives in a sedentary style, usually they can live better through sickness, but in the end, did they actually live?
yeah, that's the whole thing. Is if I go out, I want to go out with a bang. I don't want to go out with a whimper. That's the way I've really lived my whole life. I haven't talked much about that, but I mean, my whole life from the time that I graduated high school until I retired. I mean, it was. I was in the Navy, and then I was in the Border Patrol, and then in the Marshal service. So I've had what some people would probably refer to as an exciting life, and I've enjoyed it. So I don't know that I could ever really slow down. I've got to do those things. I'm not a thrill junkie or something. I just need to be active. I need to be doing things.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, David. I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for coming and for answering our questions.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming here and for joining us in another episode of Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. Bye.